You know, that's you just don't see advertising that's trying to go that direct route.
Car driven on a closed course. Roadhead not guaranteed.
Exactly.
May cause diarrhea, upset stomach, and
1.9% APR.
36 months. Yeah, so, and some people would say it's illogical to argue with somebody on an emotional level, but I'm not sure. I'm gonna leave that one hanging for a while. Maybe it is logical. I don't know. Maybe if you.
It's fun.
The trouble with ridicule, and this is something I defend a lot because I like ridicule. I think it has a purpose, and I've argued with people about this before. The beauty of being pro ridicule in an argument is that if people say ridicule is not good, you can just ridicule them. I didn't. I played nice, but if you are a jerk and you start ridiculing somebody because you presumed your shit was right when it wasn't, then ridicule is making the world worse. On the other hand, if you encounter somebody who thinks the earth is flat despite all the evidence and they just won't listen to reason no matter how hard you try, I think it's okay to ridicule that person. They're ridiculous. And I'm going to follow the word ridiculous to the letter in this case. The risk
Especially the dick
literal.
part.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I mean, when you were saying that, it reminded me of, it went like quasi-viral like last week, and I say quasi-viral because it sort of blew up, but probably only amongst a certain small, compared to the internet, small population of people, is that Bill Nye video about creationism is not for children.
Yeah.
And somebody that I'm Facebook friends with posted like the Creation Museum's rebuttal, and they had on two people with PhDs in different fields of biology explaining why evolution is bad science, and to me that's a great example and opportunity to not even argue with those people and just go, you know. And one of my first questions is, or not questions, but one of my first things I want to say is, you guys are just fucking retards, like, and whoever trained you in your education should be ashamed, like, that they let you get through a PhD. You actually managed to defend your dissertation, and you didn't manage to learn what the fuck evolution is and how it works, instead of using these weird straw men explaining how, oh, well, it doesn't ever show how the, you know, any organism acquires new genetic information. That's been demonstrated, you fucknut. You know what I mean? You have a PhD and you never fucking caught on? It's like, you just don't even argue with them. You just say, you're ridiculous. You're absurd.
Yeah. I would agree with that. It's amazing how this is the disconnect that can happen when somebody just, they get supposedly a PhD, and assuming it was from a decent school, I guess. And
the one woman on the video, it said Ohio State.
But yeah, at some point you just, and this is another thing that science does regularly, is you have a certain set of people that are cranks.
Yeah.
And you just have to marginalize those people as cranks. You can't continue on forever. You marginalize them as cranks, and then you keep moving forward. And
yeah.
And if they turn out to be right, then, you know, that's the other thing. Science corrects itself all the time.
Well, that's true.
But as far as the lulls go, those people provide many of them.
They do. They do indeed. Well, and that's, I mean, it's always a good thing to approach things in terms of how much respect you should give it, because if you give every argument respect regardless of how silly it is, that's not a good idea. And that's, again, where I think ridicule is useful.
And you can also start out with giving somebody respect, and then if they just keep repeating the same stupid shit over and over again, even though you already covered it,
yeah,
it's time to haul out the old ridicule and
right.
have at it.
I mean, like, there's some of this game playing when it comes to, like, the climate change debate. When people talk about the science there, is it's like, it's not unreasonable when people bring up, like, other variables that sound like they could be involved, like the sun, or, you know, anything that you could think of that would be natural. But, like, when people, in that you go, well, you guys are not right, but that's at least, it sounds like a reasonable thing to bring up, and we won't ridicule you for that. But then when other people say stuff like, oh, if you can get them to say, is CO2 a greenhouse gas? Yes. Does putting it in the atmosphere help trap, heat from the sun? Well, that's what a greenhouse gas is. I agree with that. And so us putting all the CO2 in the atmosphere, do you think that has an effect? And they're like, no, that's horseshit. It's basically A, then B, therefore nothing.
Yeah.
Therefore, anything that comes after B, you can suck a dick.
Well, that's the disconnect, and
yeah.
And then, it's because people start out with some idea rather than starting out clean like you're supposed to.
Mm-hmm.
And you can also jump ahead to ridicule sometimes if you have prior plausibility on your side. People that ridicule inappropriately think they have prior plausibility on their side, but they don't. It's instead of going through a full argument with a flat earther every time, I already know a lot about this subject, so I have prior plausibility. Some things have been established, research has already been done,
right?
Rockets have been launched, and I can just right off the bat now when I encounter a flat earther, I can just say that they're being retarded and to stop being such a faggot and suck that dick or whatever it is. Because I have prior plausibility, and it's based off of good scientific logical reasoning. Now that guy would say he has prior plausibility on his side as well, but again, that's just because he's a fucknut. So I don't know what to say. If everybody goes around thinking they have prior plausibility and their side is justified and everybody else's isn't, I guess what you do is just everybody go forward and move forward, and we'll see what happens.
Right.
Fine with me. I'm not going to try to hold you down or, waste a lot of time arguing with you. We'll just all try to move forward, and we'll see who makes it. And I think the problem will solve itself. I love self-solving problems.
Yeah, let other people hold on to their dumbass ideas and see how far it gets them.
Yeah. So, I don't know how many space probes have been launched, via science derived from the flat Earth theory, or from creationism, creation science.
Yeah, I'm not aware of any profound discoveries we've gotten from the creation scientists.
So score many space probes for real science, and 0 for all those other guys out there. I was going to say before, I would almost argue that those creation guys with the PhDs are being kind of faggoty. Except,
yeah,
I would be concerned that there's so many gay creationists, closeted, self-loathing gay types, that I'm
Michelle Bachmann's husband.
I'm holding back on saying faggoty to these people. Sure, yeah, there are plenty of examples. I think I saw a list last year of all the weird, really religious people that turned out to be gay, engaging in some sort of gay act or something. And
my favorite's Ted Haggard.
It was in the high 20s, around 27 or 28 as of last year, of notable, people in Congress or a church leader or something. Ted Haggard, you say? You like that as your example?
Yeah, do you remember who he is?
Yeah, the massage and was it meth?
Meth, yeah.
It's meth? Yeah.
Meth and gay prostitute.
Gay prostitute.
And he was
for massages, air quotes.
Oh, yeah. But he was the president or the chairman. I don't know what his exact position was, but he was in charge of the National Association of Evangelicals. And he likes dudes.
That's and that happens so often. So I don't know. Although, as I defined earlier, though, he still qualifies under that usage as faggoty. So and it's nothing to do with being gay.
Yeah. In his case, it really doesn't.
It's funny. I started in on this whole faggoty thing, thinking I'm going to explain it and I'm gonna reserve it, and I'm just throwing it out more than ever now.
Well, you got to hit rock bottom before.
Well, maybe I'm just shooting my faggoty wad this week, and
I think we should not follow that one down the rabbit hole.
And it will sort of disappear over time.
Yeah.
Except for the occasional throwaway gag or something.
Well, we could also, we could revisit other stuff because that came up on the bonus episode, for which I was AWOL, correct?
You were off performing experiments.
Experimenting.
Yeah. All sciencey and shit.
It was amazing. I was culturing bacteria in my nose.
Yeah. Refresh my memory as to what I said on the show because I don't remember. I was kind of drunk.
Nice. No, I was listening to it this morning. You guys were talking about movies, and it came up because you guys were talking about the end of The Dark Knight Rises and how there's sort of the implication of a Robin scenario, and how, there are ways that could go really wrong because Robin is kind of a faggoty character.
Mm-hmm. I see, yeah.
So that's how that came up there.
Yeah. That was. I remember now. One of my beer-soaked tirades that I went off on. But yeah, I'm gonna say whatever I want to say in good spirits, good-naturedly, and hopefully the audience understands what we're driving at here. And if you like people like Louis C.K. and George Carlin, not that I'm comparing myself to their great comedic talents in any way, but the way they see the world at any rate is sort of the way I see it. Excuse me. So I feel sort of like a kindred spirit there, and I'm channeling that vibe. And it's all about positivity and just having fun while thinking freely.
Mm-hmm.
So don't anybody mistake that for something else. Or, you go off and do your thing and try to move forward, and I'll do my thing and try to move forward, and we'll just see who gets where.
Yeah. I mean, I would say the only reason we're addressing this is because we want to reiterate the fact that we're not just being free, we are also thinking.
Yes. The component in free thinking that is often overlooked. I like those people that there's a group not too far away from here that has members. It's a free thought group, and it has members who believe that like these various alternative herbs and things cure cancer. Like they've said those exact words.
Nice.
And they consider themselves free thinkers. They're free, but they're not really thinkers.
Right.
So, but it's all about the fun here, and really we try to love all people here. So, take it in that context.
Yeah, I agree.
I also had another thing on my mind regarding being free and what people try to tell you you're allowed to do and not allowed to do. There have been a lot of controversies about notable personalities, I guess, over the years. Lenny Bruce got into trouble, which I think nobody really today would say was reasonable. But at the time, in that culture, I think he swore on stage, if I remember right, and he got arrested. I think that's what happened.
He wasn't even on TV or anything?
No, I think he got arrested in some podunk town or something for being indecent.
Nice.
The police were there. They knew his reputation. He was a stand-up comedian, and he was known for saying inflammatory things like shit and piss and things like that. I don't remember what else he said, but he got arrested for that. So I think we would all agree now that it's not a big deal for a comedian to say pretty much anything on stage. You might get booed or something. You might catch
shit for something.
Yeah, but you won't get arrested, So that's...
Yeah, that's bizarre.
There's the case of Penn Jillette, who called somebody a stupid cunt, I think earlier this year or last year. And he got a bunch of shit from some of the more irrational feminists out there who would argue that you can't say that word under any circumstances. He was also accused, since he called one person that he thought wrote something shitty a stupid cunt, that it got turned into, like, he thinks all women are cunts and things like that. Like, or all women who aren't funny are cunts. Like where did that generalization come from? That's just stupid.
Yeah, I don't even understand what their argument is. Like, what is so terrible about that word?
Yeah, and I've read a lot about that. I mean,
we don't have to go like super in depth with this. I just don't know what it is.
The origin of the word is, I think it has to do with being a purse originally.
Okay.
And I've also heard that it was a well in a cave or something. I don't know what the link there is, and that might not be right, but
all I know is it shows up in the Canterbury Tales, and in the way it's used, it means the way we use it now.
A stupid woman.
Oh no, there's it's spelled slightly differently, but the phrase is like sees her by the, and it does not mean the purse, it means the crotch.
And I kid. A stupid guy can be a cunt too. So
that's true.
Equal opportunity ridicule. I said that earlier because I actually thought the opposite. That's the point of the joke. You literal douches. So yeah, I think it's coin purse and possibly a well in a cave. That's where it started from, and then somehow turned into all these other things. So, and I think that was bullshit. What happened to Penn Jillette? Tracy Morgan. I'm not really sure what happened here. He got in trouble for saying, like, he would kill his son if he found out he was gay. I don't really think that's a very funny joke, but he was saying it in the context of being on a stage.
Yeah.
And as I've said many times, when you are trying to tell jokes, first of all, you're trying to think of them quickly. If you haven't written them already, like if you're just riffing, sort of casually for like a quick set. And also, he probably believes the opposite of what he said, which is why it's funny and absurd. You be absurd by saying the opposite of what you think and what makes sense. So obviously, he doesn't really want to kill his son if he finds out he's gay. It's the opposite extreme.
Yeah.
So I think that was, while not the funniest joke in the world, sort of shitty for different interest groups to parade him around and force him to go through a bunch of fake apologies and shine the spotlight on him way more than he deserved for just a throwaway line. Which leads me to Daniel Tosh, the guy who was being heckled in a comedy club.
That's another example where he just made a bad joke.
Yeah, I think he said a rape joke, and then some cunty woman in the audience, and it could have been a cunty man, but in this case it just happened to be a cunty woman, said, like, during his act, just started talking when she wasn't supposed to. Actually, like, something blah blah blah, like, I don't think blah 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 about rape. And, like, first of all, shut the fuck up or get the fuck out. Like, right. It's a performance. It's not like we're all going to talk time. And then
you're not at a political rally where you're debating the platform. Like,
right. So in order to crush the heckler, which is what you have to do as a comedian, he said something along the lines of, wouldn't it be funny if this woman got raped by like 6 guys right now? And I don't remember the rest because I'm doing this on the fly, but
right.
And then he got a bunch of shit from interest groups and the media and a bunch of PC fucks. And again, he was being absurd, and he was trying to be quick and shocking and try to shut down a heckler with shocking, absurd statements, which were probably the opposite of what makes sense and what he actually thinks.
Right.
So that's another example. Michael Richards. Now, that was definitely not funny when he called those guys niggers because they were heckling him. But he panicked. He panicked on stage, and he
fucked up.
He just fucked up. And I actually don't believe he's a racist. He felt terrible later. He looked terrible when he went on Letterman with Seinfeld as the guest. And he seemed very remorseful, and even like going so far as to say, maybe I am a racist. I think I'm going to like see if I can find out, like, get some help or something. And that does not sound like a racist. That sounds like somebody who was trying to think of something absurd to say on stage fast, and he just said some shit that wasn't funny. And if you say inflammatory shit that's un-PC and unfunny, that's a recipe for a bunch of people like running you through the ringer, like the media and interest groups.
Right.
And I wish that he would, resume his comedy career, and I'll bet you everything would be fine.
Well, and like you just have to sort of look at the way like heckling and shutting down heckling works. Like you don't reason with a heckler. You know what I mean? It sort of is. This sort of ties back to what we were talking about earlier. You have to appeal to them emotionally to shut them down. And how could you appeal to certain people emotionally? You go, you know what I mean? If they've got a slur that you can use against them, use it, because if it hits them in an emotional way that makes them shut up, you know what I mean? You can move on.
Yeah.
Like, or not even a slur. It doesn't have to be a slur.
It should have a gag in there somewhere too. That was what he did. He just didn't have a gag.
Right.
He just called them niggers, and that was it. And he just said it over and over again. And
yeah, so I would revise what I just said.
So you can use the slur, but there's got to be an absurdity mixed in with it, or else you're just fucking yourself big time.
Yeah.
And that was his mistake, and it's too bad. Like, his career got torpedoed, and that was the end of that. And he even felt bad about it himself. It screwed him up. The thing he said screwed him up, and that's a shame.
Right.
But I don't believe that he deserved what he got there.
Yeah, let me go back and clarify too, because like what you just said, I didn't mean that go for the slur.
In a comedy club you can, but we're not talking about on the sidewalk.
Oh yeah, but even then, like, I'm not saying that if you go for a racial slur to shut somebody down, I understand. What I really mean to say is I understand that you're going for something emotional to shut him down, and he went to the slur place and it didn't work.
And I get what you mean too, that you're not saying just go to a slur. You're saying it's fair game and a gag.
Yeah.
Yeah, because people do it all the time. We're just not remembering those other ones.
Yeah, I mean, just like remember anytime you were in school and like the teacher was annoyed that you were doing something. They don't shut you down by saying something like, you're not going to effectively learn the material if you continue talking or playing with your balls. Like, they say, you're going to get detention if you don't shut the fuck up. Like, and that freaks you out. You go, it freaked me out. But, it's because I got scared, so I stopped. I didn't go, I understand her careful and well-reasoned point. That's how that shit works. It's crowd control.
That's something that I think about and mention once in a while too, is the different ways you can condition other human beings so that they don't fuck with you. And some people are you catch more flies with honey than with vinegar type.
Yeah.
And I think that that's a stupid way to think, because it eliminates like the whole other angle, which is people respond very well to their own suffering.
Yeah.
And especially suffering with immediacy to it. And that means being mean sometimes. And that works. You should try to be nice first, and you should try to be nice more than you're mean. But if somebody's being a douchebag, and especially if you're in a hurry, you can be mean with expediency, get what you want. They learn a lesson. Maybe they'll even change their mind because of it later, even though it wasn't a logical argument.
Yeah. And
everybody's happy. I mean, I've been ridiculed when I was like a kid for doing stupid shit, and it did make me think. And I've also been like hit different times, and it was because I was being a dumbass, and I was like, oh yeah. Now there are other times where I was being hit because of other reasons that I still disagree with, but sometimes that works. That shit works sometimes. And I would totally hit somebody. This is something I've thought long and hard about. Should you ever hit somebody? And different years have gone by where I was like, no, you should never do that. But yeah, you should. Like, there are cases where it's fine. There are extreme cases. But to take that completely off the table, I think is really stupid. And, sucks to be you if that's what you think. We'll both go forward with our different ways, and we'll see like what happens with you and what happens with me. So,
right.
Moving along, a couple other examples I had in mind were Jeff Ross, the guy that roasts people professionally on Comedy Central.
Yeah.
He dressed as, I think it was Joe Paterno. I don't think it was Sandusky. I think it was Joe Paterno. And he got a bunch of shit for that from people. I don't know.
This is another one, I'm curious about. Like, what about that is so terrible?
That's just people being PC fucks, I think. Because, maybe that's where when people say too soon, that's where that comes from. Right. There's no real reason, just too soon. But He's noted for that. He dressed up as Gaddafi for another roast.
Nice.
And he was a horrible guy, and nobody said a word about that. But for some reason, if you dress up as Joe Paterno while you're doing a comedy gig, I just don't know. I don't know what their problem with it was, other than they somehow confused it in their mind to think this is either making fun of kids who were molested, or you're somehow in favor of molesting, or something like that. And it's nothing of the sort.
Right. I mean, that makes me think that The Onion must not be as mainstream as I think it is, because they totally had an article like sometime in the past few months that said something along the lines of, Penn State goes ahead with the name, up for Joe Paterno's Center for the Prevention of Child Abuse or something like that. It was fucking funny. And it just make me think that The Onion is not mainstream enough that people catch that shit. Because they did so many Paterno gags. I just don't get it.
Yeah, so anyway, Jeff Ross got in trouble for that. And that's the sort of stupid bullshit. This is why I'm going through this list. It's stupid bullshit that the PC fucks are running. I guess either to get attention, or because they really are that thick and they don't understand like what people are trying to do. They don't understand the difference between literalism and absurdity. I don't know, but they can suck a giant bag of donkey dicks, whatever else is the case.
Yes.
Janet Jackson and her nipple. Everybody remembers that Super Bowl.
Oh, yeah.
Which, of course, led to years of bullshit from the FCC, these horribly restrictive rules, and it ruined, I think it ruined radio, which is what caused Howard Stern and Opie and Anthony to leave regular radio and go over to satellite radio. Because they could say what they wanted to say, and there were no FCC rules. Because the FCC only covers the radio band. It doesn't cover private satellite signals.
Right.
It's only about public radio band. So speaking of Howard Stern and Opie and Anthony, Howard Stern, I don't remember when he got fired and when he just got in trouble and stuff, but he's been run through the ringer different times. Anybody that's listened to him, I've listened to him on and off over the years when I could. I've not been a regular listener, but
okay.
I enjoyed his show different times. And I got a lot of shit from PC fucks over just saying I enjoyed it. And Opie and Anthony got fired different times for what I would say is, you could either classify it as little minuscule shit, or if you wanted to say it was a big deal, they did many other things on their show that weren't noticed by anybody, because it was either talking about white people or something. They got fired one time because they had a homeless man in their studio and they were interviewing him, and the homeless man said something about raping Secretary of State during Bush's administration. She was black.
Oh,
Condoleezza Rice.
Yeah.
He said something about raping her, and that got them fired the next day. And it wasn't even Opie and Anthony. They just had a homeless guy in their studio because they wanted to see what the homeless guy was up to and thinking, and they gave him
what kind of shit he would say.
Yeah, and they gave him a bunch of sandwiches and $20, and it was the best day ever for that homeless guy, and this is the thanks they got. And they couldn't control what he said. So, and it wasn't even that bad.
That is pretty weird.
It's a weird thing to say, but there were many other things on their show that were worse that they said, and they nothing happened. But for some reason, just selectively, and this is this is another thing I hate. This sort of selectivism of, you never know when you're gonna get in trouble, and
right.
There are no clear defined rules, and it's up to a bunch of arbitrary assholes who, if they're in a bad mood that day or something, they can make you lose your job or fuck with your life in some way. That is not freedom. That is not thinking. So I'm against it. Yes. Same thing with Don Imus. Got fired for calling some women's basketball team a bunch of nappy-headed hoes.
Oh, yeah.
And, again, not a very funny joke. But was he supposed to get fired for that? I don't think so. The only reason I think he got fired was because he was talking about a minority, and because that minority had an interest group that was interested in using this guy's celebrity for their own purposes. That happens a lot.
Yeah.
I noticed Louis C.K. actually got in trouble, come to think of it.
That's not a big surprise, but
he lost...
I didn't know about this.
I don't know if this is absolutely the cause, but he blamed Bill Donahue, excuse me.
Yeah, big difference.
Who was the head of the Catholic League, which is another interest group. And
yeah.
Bill Donahue never even watched his show, and he wrote this like scathing criticism of it. And what this guy does is just goes around complaining about everything that he sees as anti-Catholic, and he usually is just talking out of his ass, in my opinion, and is only doing it because his job is to gain like some sort of, you know, benefit for the Catholic Church.
Oh yeah, that guy is super duper full of shit. And the way that I know he's full of shit is because when I was growing up, I was, you know, I don't think I've ever brought it up on the show, but, you know, I grew up in a Catholic family, went to Catholic schools all my life, and I grew up in a southern state as a Catholic. And what I learned pretty quickly is that the people who like the Catholics the least and are the shittiest to the Catholics are Protestants. We lived in a neighborhood filled with, you know, Baptists and Methodists and Jehovah's Witnesses and evangelicals. And when they found out, even as little kids, when they didn't even know what the fuck they were talking about, and I was like, what? You know, I'd be like 10 years old, and neighborhood kids would be like, oh, you're Catholic, so you worship the devil? Like, you know, they're just like, oh, so you do everything the Pope says? And worse stuff than that. And I was just like, what the fuck? Like, and obviously, you know, they were little kids too, so this is what their parents thought, and we're telling them that Catholics were evil. And it's like, that's how I know you're full of shit, Bill Donahue, is because you don't go on TV and say, you know who the biggest enemy of the Catholics in the United States is? Fucking Protestants. Like, because they think that they're drones. And, you know, whatever truth there may be in that, I don't know. But if you're going to call a spade, you know, at least be honest, it's not the atheists or the Muslims or whoever that are the biggest foes of Catholicism in the United States. It's Protestants who you know, whatever, tar and feather them.
Which is interesting that you say drones. I guess I'll just work this in now. Something that I've thought of different times is on occasion I go to church just to sort of fuck around. And,
well, there's nothing else going on that day.
I'm a curious guy, and I like to sort of, you know what's going on in different areas of life. And
yeah, I almost went for Ash Wednesday last year. I was bored.
It's excruciating whenever I go, but I've gone different times, and in Catholic church, it may just be me, but I see a striking similarity in the vibrato between like a Catholic prayer and like the Borg ultimatum from Star Trek: The Next Generation.
Right.
I don't know. I'll let people take a listen and see what they think.
Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And we will add your biological and technological distinctiveness to our own. Your culture will adapt to service us. Resistance is futile. Amen.